The Cape Forensic Science Lab has bought DNA processing equipment to help try clear the police backlogs. Listen to the numbers. 36,000 sexual offence cases alone were outstanding in the province by September last year. The SAPS is promising to clear the backlogs nationally by January next year. But here's some other numbers. Only 21% of the backlogs nationally have been cleared in the last 5 months. So it's quite a claim to make. Western Cape Community Safety eNCA, Regan Allen joining us. Regan, good morning to you. We'll talk about the Western Cape in just a moment. First of all, as I mentioned, those numbers, it's 240,000 cases. They're going to try and clear that by January. Do you think SAPS can get it right?
What we have seen, and firstly, thank you for having me this morning. What we have seen that since the lid was opened up in terms of the backlog, we've seen it since 2018, 2019, it ballooned. And here in the Western Cape, we have cautiously welcomed a reduction in the DNA backlog here in the Western Cape. But nationally, despite assurances that we have received, despite in National Parliament words being echoed that urgency is being applied to this particular matter, we haven't seen it on the ground, because to a large extent, my main concern is the backlog in terms of how the secondary victimization attached to it, because we see a number, if someone is released and the DNA did not come back, that person could be released and reoffend as well. So it is alarming. I've just in this week again received an update that we are awaiting the updated Western Cape figures for January 1 to end of March. But it has been a slow, extremely slow matter, because this is strictly under national government. But we have fostered those relationships here in the Western Cape in order to at least we visited the Forensic Science Laboratory here in Backlog in the Western Cape. But there's a long way to go.
There is a long way to go. Regan and I do understand that we're waiting for the latest numbers, the very latest up-to-date numbers. But what is the numbers that you're able to share with me as far as the figures are concerned? I know we're waiting for the new ones to come out, but what do you currently have, either nationally, if you can, or provincially for the Western Cape, if you could?
Here in the Western Cape, we saw the figures that I've received was that between June and September last year, it was 89,000 in terms of the backlog. Then for September to January, from September up until December, it was then 69. So we've seen a slight reduction in that regard. And obviously, once we get the figures for January to March of 2020, we would be seeing if that is a steady decrease or if it has just halted again, because we've been told via numerous engagements that the urgency is applied, but we ultimately want to see it in the numbers so that the backlog can be reduced, because ultimately it's SAPS's responsibility. And if the contracts of the maintenance that was in place, if that was not halted in 2018, we would not have been sitting here.
And this is where we now come into where the Western Cape, this Forensic Science Lab. Regan, talk to me about this as well, because you're quite right in that it is the SAPS's job to do this, but Western Cape feeling like you're having to now try and take the lead on this. So tell me about this Forensic Science Lab. Where did this come into play? Where is it physically? And what's the kind of impact that it's having?
There is 3 forensic science labs within our country that is managed by the South African Police Service. So it's all under national competency. So even here in the Western Cape, SAPS Western Cape won't have control over the science laboratory, which is based here in the Western Cape. It will still be a national competency. With that, we've been hammering in terms of let's get enough staff members. Let's ensure that the agents that are required in order to do the testing are there. Let's make sure that the machines that are actually needed to test the DNA are there. Let's make sure that it is being maintained, because once one of the machines stops to work, the entire thread ultimately comes to a halt, because there's processes that are used. So we have basically demanded, we have at times begged on behalf of many citizens, understanding that many people are in such a tough predicament, and now justice has been not only delayed but denied in many cases, because the courts are saying we can't be we can't be postponing for more than 12 months every month, and then they will send the docket back ultimately. So we've seen, and I've spoken to many victims who have said they feel helpless, they feel totally at pain in terms of what has been happening in terms of the DNA backlog. But it's SAP's national year.
We've been speaking to a number of people at this weekend, and our reporters have spoken to victims of GBV, for example, Regan as well, who feel they almost actually don't even want to bother coming out to try and lay a case and lay a charge, because it just takes too long for DNA. It's that secondary victimization they even talk about, not just in the police station itself, but also by not getting the justice which they rightly deserve. Regan, I was going to change tack very quickly, if you don't mind, while I've got you on. It's about the police and about policing. Tell me about the article groundup.org.za saying that Bekinkele's 2018 promise not going to be kept until 2025, 2026. Makaza's still waiting for this promised police station. I mean, how difficult can this really be? Last brief answer from you, please.
To bring you in on it, there was a Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry in 2014. That Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry made certain recommendations. Little to none of those recommendations were implemented. In the Makaza area, for example, SAPS in 2014 undertook to build a fully fledged SAPS station. Last year in October, I attended a SAPS in Bizo, and SAPS launched a mobile unit, a truck, instead of a fully fledged station. And you sit there and you hear that over a 7-year period, instead of building a SAP station as was undertaken, they provide a truck with a number of SAPS members on the truck, and they are going to be stationed in Makaza, which is a hotspot area which has a police to population ratio of 1 officer to almost 1,000 residents in that particular area. So it's deeply concerning, and despite numerous organizations, despite the Western Cape government, despite the city of Cape Town doing all in their power, we know that we need to work alongside the South African Police Service. And I'm delighted actually in the one hand that we've seen successes in terms of the Western Cape Safety Plan, where we've been able to put extra boots on the ground in order to bolster the inefficiencies within the South African Police Service. And
I'm sorry, I was going to leave that as my last question. I've just seen this now, though. Is it true, Regan, that this truck from the SAPS, this mobile police station, is inside a shopping centre? How does that work? Because doesn't that close late at night, which is kind of counterintuitive, isn't it?
Exactly. And even when I saw the truck, it was unveiled with much fanfare. But if you see the truck, it's a normal bus size, and even the risk attached to having a mobile truck, because if there's 2 or 3 SAPS members in the truck, you never know if there would be a gang or if there will be violent people that could be trying to overthrow this particular truck or try to get in order to get some of the equipment or some of the ammunition within this particular truck. So that entire protocols in terms of SAPS safety for just having this truck is also a huge concern. But we have stated the Khayelitsha Commission of Inquiry, which covers areas like Khayelitsha, Linguletu West and Harare, is areas that has been starved of resources. And sadly, I do want to state for the record, sometimes the National Minister will say that the Western Cape government is deploying SAPS members and where those SAPS members must go. That is strictly in terms of what SAPS is doing. The Western Cape government has no control over the South African Police Service. We've been wanting to foster that relationship here in the Western Cape, and we have fostered those relationships. But I would never want to play politics. I would never want to enter. If I must choose between a life and a vote, it's ultimately I will always want to save someone and choose that life. But politics in the past has got into the way of it. But this is serious matters, and we definitely want to bolster SAPS.
Well, I appreciate your time in speaking to us this morning. Western Cape Community Safety MEC Regan Allen joining us this morning about what has been happening with the DNA backlogs. It looks like some movement there, and this very worrying report that this mobile police station is actually inside a shopping centre which doesn't serve the community beyond 9 p.m. at night. Thanks, Regan Allen, for your time.